at its core, every economic transaction is between two individuals. Why does the government have to get into the middle of that?
Ed Moy was the 38th director of the US Mint and one of the highest-ranking government officials to have spoken out favorably about Bitcoin in its earliest days when no one in government was talking about this. You may also remember him from this now infamous Bitcoin panel in 2015, where Craig Wright first claimed to be Satoshi.
How did you first learn about Bitcoin?
I've been involved with all this for a long time. I mean, I try and I keep my head down.
That's Ed on the far left. I chat with him about the huge increase in the demand for gold during the Great Recession, why gold has perceived value rather than intrinsic value, the need for Bitcoin and a money not controlled by government, and what regulation might look like in Bitcoin's future, according to his insider perspective. Enjoy.
I've been really fortunate in that I'm one of the few people in the world that actually physically manufactures money. And so that caused me to be a student of money and how we got here. And during my tenure, which was from 2006 to 2011, coincided with the Satoshi white paper. And so my strategic staff, who took a look at all my planning, basically, I remember seeing my first footnote on it and said, "What is that?" And so that's when they explained it to me. And over time, what I saw was great potential in this technology. And I've spent a lot of my time post-mint trying to help that potential develop and realize its full benefits to society.
A lot of people who are interested in gold, I'm so used to them saying, well, gold, it has this intrinsic value. There's nothing to cryptocurrency. So how did you recognize that, this unique digital asset had some value?
Yep. Through exchanges, just like gold, people buy and sell dollars for this to Bitcoin, to gold, to back again. And because of that, the market places a value on it based on any perceived use at that point in time.
I was wondering what you thought about the difference or the confusion out there between historic value and intrinsic value, because I see that people sometimes conflate those two.
Mm-hmm. Ultimately, value is derived from the individual that is using it. And so they ultimately make that determination. Where I think fiat currency gets into its problems is just by the word fiat. It is a government directive. The government tells you that that dollar is worth the dollar, even though it's not printed on a dollar's worth of paper, or it doesn't have a dollar's worth of copper or gold in it. So that's why currency has legal tender on it. It's by law. You have to accept it as that.
This has value because the government tells you that it has value.
That's right, and I'd rather have the market determine that.
I'm really excited looking forward to the future of Bitcoin, and I'm also wondering what's going to happen with this upcoming battle. You have a lot of government agencies who dislike cryptocurrency in general, but there are some officials who, like you, see the value in it and see the opportunities there, see the cost-saving measures that could occur, and see the inclusivity that could come as a result of cryptocurrency. So how do you think this is going to play out?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the short term, the regulatory environment is unclear. And that's really because it's not that government is trying to kill Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. What they're trying to figure out is there a dimension of cryptocurrency that falls under the regulatory authority that I have? So the IRS looks at it as a taxable event. The SEC looks at it as a possible security. The Commodities Futures Trading Commission looks at it as a commodity. And so as a result of that, because cryptocurrencies are multidimensional, that's where you get the confusion. So I think as this matures, that will eventually sort itself out.
And where do you see the future of cryptocurrency going in general? Are we going to see an ecosystem where there are lots of different competing assets? Do you think that we will continue this tradition of just having one money win out over the marketplace?
Mm-hmm. Well, right now, one money doesn't win out over the marketplace. When I need dollars, I have dollars. But when I'm traveling Europe, I have to convert those to euros. And when I go to Japan, I got to convert that to yen. I hold gold. Consumers have a lot of choice. And what consumers end up doing is using the currency and the payment method that is most convenient for every single transaction. So for example, when you buy a flat screen TV, you're not carrying $1,001 bills into the store to buy it. You're not even using a check anymore because a credit card is much easier. But when you're buying some mints at the drugstore, it's easier to use cash. And so that's the future that I see. Even though I see great promise in cryptocurrencies, I don't see them as a 100% substitution for everything that we're doing in currency and payment systems. So I think, for example, checks were dominant way of paying for big ticket items 25 years ago. They're not so much anymore. But we still have checks today. And I know people and companies that rely on people writing them checks for certain types of transactions. At the same time, people use money orders or credit cards or electronic transfer of funds all the way to cash and debit and credit and all this stuff. So I think cryptocurrencies will add on to that. But over time, you're going to see the market share of cryptocurrencies and electronic transactions increase, and a lot of the physical transactions begin to decrease, but there will always, for example, be a role for cash.
Do you ever feel a bit sad for gold? You know, it's been held up as the ultimate paragon of money for so long, and now we have this other asset that's come along that's far more convenient for international purchases. Does that make you sad?
It does not. So I was director of the Mint from 2006 to 2011, and 2007 and 8 were the financial crisis, and 2010 and 11 were the peaks of the consequences of that in the beginning of the Great Recession. What we saw was a 900% increase in gold demand from the United States Mint. So the US Mint makes gold, silver, and platinum bullion coins for financial investors. We saw almost 1,000% increase in the demand for gold and a 400% increase in the demand for silver during that period of time. So even though Keynes and Galbraith have said gold is an ancient relic, that relic is still very valuable today and has an appropriate use in financial markets.
And I think maybe a lot of people don't realize that Bitcoin isn't a replacement, as you said, for gold or for US dollar or for any of these other currencies. You're going to see a lot of these things coexisting. Yes. And that's because they have different use cases, as you said. Mm-hmm.
And I also think that government has seen some of the positives behind cryptocurrencies, and you're going to see them explore co-opting some of those elements. So they won't be a cryptocurrency in that it won't be a private sector alternative, but it'll be government. But they're going to take, like for example, the Bank of England is exploring how to put their currency, part of it, on blockchain to be able to keep track of all these various transactions for them. So I think governments are going to blur the line as we go off into the future.
And you mentioned that you were in office when the Great Recession happened, and that was around the time that you started to hear about Bitcoin. Why do you think that those things coincided? Why do you think Bitcoin came directly after a giant global economic catastrophe?
Yep, that's a really great question, and I don't think it was coincidence. I think it was by intent. I think a number of people took a look at what caused the financial crisis, and they said it was bad government policy and government trying to manipulate the economy. And shouldn't we have an alternative to government's control of money? And therefore, that's why I define cryptocurrency as a private sector currency or a private sector alternative. But shouldn't there be a currency that is apart from the government, because at its core, every economic transaction is between two individuals? Why does the government have to get into the middle of that? And when you look at the very beginnings of currency, at least in Western civilization, in Lydia, which is now Turkey, where we find the first coins, there was no evidence that those first coins were made by the government. They were pieces of gold that were found on the ground, and when you find gold naturally, they're part gold, part silver. It's called electrum. And then they were stamped. And so we think that that early coinage was done by private individuals. And where governments got involved was it got to be such a popular idea, and because you couldn't determine the exact ratio of gold and silver per nugget, you can only get the rough weight. Governments had the scale to refine it, whereas you can't build a refinery in your backyard and then make as many coins as the economy needs. And so governments started getting involved, and it's not coincidental that when governments started making coins, gone are the original Slater, which had symbols of a lion or an eagle on it, and now you have the emperor's face on the front and symbols of the state's power on the back, with a very clear message. Your prosperity is intricately linked to the government.
Right. That's such a change in mentality that we saw happen there. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that. So I'm excited to see a future where you have people who've grown up with cryptocurrencies and they don't necessarily link currency to government or the creation of money to government. This is something that they associate with private companies, to sovereign individuals, and that mental shift, I think, is going to be a game changer for society.
Yep, I totally agree with you. And I think ultimately people should decide through competition. And if government has a better solution, that will eventually win. But I do think that government does have a monopoly on money, and as a result, a little bit of competition will improve not only government's management of money, but will improve the consumer because they'll have more options.
Absolutely. Here's to a future where everyone's standards are raised. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, and thank you for being an advocate of cryptocurrency in the very early days when no one was talking about this. Thank you so much.
Yep, you're very welcome.
Baby shark do 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 do, baby shark do 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 do, baby shark do 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 do, baby shark.